Hello. Thank you for tuning in to this fast chat on generative AI. My name is Daphne Singer. Today I'm talking with Rampart AI's CEO Lee Krause about future-proofing Gen AI and the approach Rampart takes to accomplish this. So let's jump right in. What are some of the threats and vulnerabilities in Gen AI development?
So I think Gen AI falls into the same class of working with open source tools or working with code that you haven't developed and inheriting those vulnerabilities. It's the classic problem where you're working with something that you assume is trustworthy, but really hasn't earned your trust. So with Gen AI, you're running into the same problem. You're basically using high level abstractions, right? Whether they be prompts or requirements or inputs into a large language model, and it's going and creating output for you that is basically code that can actually run on the machine. And you're assuming what's been created is true and correct and works as expected. So it falls into that exact same cast of what vulnerabilities are in there, and do I understand how that code works? And I think that's the best way to think about this is that you have this abstraction as to what your system's going to do, and somebody else has created the code that you don't know, and you're assuming that they've done everything correctly. And we need to narrow down the vulnerabilities that are threats that are associated with this unknown amount of code.
Perfect. So let's talk about how Rampart detects and mitigates some of these threats and vulnerabilities.
That's a really great question. So Rampart provides two key benefits that you can think about this way. If you put Rampart in as part of your CI/CD pipeline, you can ensure the code that's created meets the requirements. You can also break it down so that you have functions that have been created, and you can prove your functions work as expected as you take those functions and make applications out of it. So I think the first thing is being able to have, being part of the CI/CD pipeline and ensuring that what you've created, you can test against requirements to ensure that it works as expected. Now, once you've done that, the next key component is this is great, but now you're actually running in the real world. You have to ensure that as it's running as expected, and you get none of the surprises, because no one likes to get surprises in the cyber world. And you want to be able to understand, is your system running as expected first time, every time? And I think Rampart has the capability now to continuously monitor your application through deployment to ensure it's working as expected and alerting you or blocking behavior that's outside that norm. And I think that is just so key to improving reliability and the security of Gen AI developed applications. And it's, to me, it's foundational. Like, if you're not doing that, you're risking deploying those codes. It's great for your science project, but not really going to ever get to deployment.
So, on a broader scale, how do you see the role of security evolving in AI and machine learning development?
So I think it's kind of interesting in that there's two parts of it, and it's kind of a yin and yang there. So one side of it, the security, is that you have the ability to use Gen AI to greatly build test cases to ensure that you can get full coverage associated with the Gen AI created application. So you have the power to do that, but you have to have the discipline to actually use it and use that as the metric to determine what's successful. So I think that the real key there is this ability to take advantage of what Gen AI is really good at, which is basically allowing you to describe the requirements, building out your test cases, building out your metrics for what you consider to be successful, right? And also the ability to rapidly make changes. It does all those things very well associated with AI. From a security standpoint, you have to take advantage of what it's offering you. And if you're not taking advantage of what it's offering you, you're at great risk.
So, let's talk a bit about how Rampart AI supports businesses in transitioning to an AI driven software development cycle and the key benefits that they can expect from doing so.
Rampart is ready to use today. So you can take your applications that are currently running and have Rampart run as part of those applications to ensure they're running as expected, ensuring you get a baseline of behavior for those applications. So then you can start this transition, whether you're doing support using GenAI, whether you're maintaining it using GenAI, whether you're doing modernization of it, any of those cases, you already have the framework where Rampart is already being used, and it's just a matter of it growing with you as you continue to develop more robust test cases, your ability to rapidly change the code, all flows through a CI/CD pipeline that happens naturally. So you get the full benefit of GenAI being able to rapidly generate code based on requirements and prompts, you being able to test that code to ensure it's doing what you designed it to do, and then you're able to take that immediately and run it in deployment and ensure it behaves as expected first time every time. And I think that really flows extremely well. And you can start doing that today. And the benefit of starting today, it allows you to really understand from a container standpoint, as you migrate code, you're able to ensure that it's still working as expected all along.
So are there any more key features or capabilities of Rampart that set it apart in GenAI development?
Absolutely. So the key features you're really talking about are critical pieces that ensure the function or the application meets the requirements that are associated with what's being developed. That understanding kind of the strengths and weaknesses of that code, understanding when it actually meets those requirements or that function or for the application itself is just an incredibly key feature that needs to exist. And without it, you're never really going to be able to understand when you develop something that's good enough. So that's one key feature associated with it. The second key feature, I think, is really associated with it's great that you've developed this code. It's great that we've tested it out, but now we're putting it in development and we want to ensure it runs as expected. And Rampart allows you to take it directly from development to deployment and ensure during deployment it runs as expected. You'll get alerted if it behaves differently. We can block certain behavior that should never happen. So even if somebody tries to attack your application after development, right, Rampart is going to prevent that from happening. If someone somehow miraculously put backdoors in your application, it's going to prevent that from happening. These are key things. So your supply chain is not an issue. Surprises are not an issue. Even attacks that are occurring at real time are not an issue because Rampart's got your back. It's going to prevent anomalous behavior from happening within that application. And that is just so key. And it allows people to realize the code that was developed during GenAI is going to work as expected. It's going to be reliable and it's going to be secure, which are the key components that Rampart's providing and why it's so critical for GenAI development.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. And to our listeners, thanks for sticking around. For more information about Rampart AI, head to rampart-ai.com. Until next time, stay secure.